welcome to story time. Here we're going to be talking about Cassandra in reverse, which, just to put this ahead, go ahead and click off if you're looking for a recommendation rather than if you want to actually just like hear some of the summary and some of my opinions about the things that happen in the book. There are definitely going to be spoilers, so if you are not interested in talking about what actually happens in it, then no worries, go somewhere else. But if you are interested in hearing some of the plot points and some of the things that happen in the book itself, go ahead and talk about it now. So this is not a full you should read it or you shouldn't, or recommending it or not. I just finished reading this book and it was so strange in certain places. So there are things that I really like and also things that I thought were just bizarre, like really weird ways to deal with the story. So to put in context, Cassandra in Reverse is by Holly Smeel, I think is how you say it. And she has autism, and she was diagnosed later in life. So some of this is relevant to the book because she does write about an autistic protagonist who also has synesthesia, which is the thing that you can like see feeling, which is also a thing that she processes as well. So there's some parallels between the author and the book. But I'm not gonna say this isn't like an autobiography or anything like that. There's just, influences by. So I think there's things we can comment and also know that like the way she wrote it was probably from her real lived experience and some of that comprehension. So first off, there's like 5-ish plots points going on throughout this book. So, and I think some of them are better than others when you're trying to like put it all together. So the book opens and it's Cassandra, that's her main character. It's like worst day of her life. She ends up losing her job, which is like one point, one subplot. Her boyfriend dumps her, which is another like plot. One of her longer relationships, which I think she says like 3 or 4 months. So she gets fired. She like lives her like living situation. It's known that she's been like asked to leave, so she's like subletting like a room from this couple. So there's like the housing plot substrain, and then there's also this like mysterious person that you kind of hear about a couple times throughout it trying to contact her. We later find out it's her sister, so we're gonna go with like this 4th plot. And then there's this moment where we're also comprehending a little bit about like her past. So you get, and that's kind of tied into the sister thing and like a little bit like how did we get here. So those are kind of the area, like the major areas in the book. And I think there's some really interesting things that go on with like, there's a uniqueness to this plot where Cassandra, it's not that she's stuck in a particular day. So there's time travel. It's like a little fantasy, but not like whole fantasy. She ends up, she ends up getting like a power to be able to go back in time, but we find out like there's certain constraints to it. So it's not like Groundhog Day in that she's reliving one particular day, but there is this thing where she relives like a lot of things in different orders. And I think that's a really great like overall theme to think about. Like, are certain things inevitable and how much can you change stuff? Like, are people always gonna be total assholes the entire way, or are they gonna like, can your relationship to them change? Is something always going to happen the same way, or can you alter it? And I think there's kind of this interesting subdivide between she's able to alter some things, as in like her relationships to certain people, but then other times it's still like certain things are just always gonna happen. Like, she always gets dumped by this guy. So she finds out on this day that she's able to go ahead and like go backwards in time. And she isn't able, like, we find out their parameters. She kind of just like closes her eyes and thinks about like the thing that she wants to go back to, and she's able to go back to that time. It's within herself. So she kind of goes back in time where she was. It's not like she's just like anywhere. Then there's also the constraint that it can only go as far back as the day that she like meets her boyfriend. So she can't like go backwards in time. Like, there was a discussion of her going back in time trying to save her parents, because we find out her parents die from like a car crash, and in that way she can only go all the way back to, like, she can't go back and save them. She already tried that. She can only go back as far as her like meeting this boyfriend. So that was very interesting that they like time bound it. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that sure, she could have the capacity to do things like try and win the lottery, try and alter their like state of her life. Like, she can go backwards in time several times. They address this a little bit, but the thing is, she straight up doesn't do any of that like typical stuff that you would think about with you think about with time travel ones, like when somebody relives a day and like is an asshole to somebody and like plays it again and like goes lots of different places. She actually just kind of sticks to one mission, and her mission is to like try and get this boyfriend not to break up with her. Like, that's her one focus. So she plays back a lot of their relationship to try and redo it, and it's actually really funny. Like, the first thing she does is like their first meeting, she keeps botching it, and like I want to say like 20 times, 30 times. Like, she tries it so many times that it's like almost impossible to get to rehappen, that they like start even going out. And they do have this moment where they talk about like she doesn't like age in herself, but she does like get mentally tired from the repeated tasks. Like, there's this one where she's trying to like recreate their first sleeping together moment, and it was like not good. So she replays a whole bunch of them. It's kind of interesting because even though she's like focused on this guy, it's very like unromantic the way she kind of like deals with him. Oh my gosh, Mittens, you want to join me? That's fine, you can join the video. So she does that and tries to recreate like all the greatest moments. Oh my gosh, stop meowing. Try and recreate all the moments for their relationship and see like where it went wrong, and kind of like trying to smooth herself over. And anyway, so that's one of the subplots, her trying to recreate a relationship, that magic with her boyfriend. And it's funny because she like botches it way more and starts getting broke up with like way sooner than she had the first time. So it was actually like the first attempt was actually her best one. Then later we find out that like there's this person where they're saying like she's ripping up these envelopes from somebody trying to contact her, blah blah blah, and we find out it's her sister, and her sister's name is Artemis. There's a lot of like Greek mythology, Roman names thrown in there. I kind of like it. It's a fun little like quirk to the personality. But anyway, we find out it's her sister at one point, and her sister had said some like truly like messed up stuff about her at her parents' funeral, basically, and like it's your fault that they're dead, and all your eccentricities is like I couldn't have had a normal childhood. So I think it's like a very interesting dynamic that they brought this up, the idea of like the being part of a family with somebody who's autistic or like on the spectrum can be really difficult for the other people around them, versus and like what that realistically feels like to them, but also like some of the stuff she said was not okay. So she had basically been avoiding her sister for 10 years after she had like gone off at that. And I just think the way they dealt with their relationship was so strange. Like, they made up so quickly. And it was this big reveal at the end of the book that her mom was autistic, and then in the like medical notes file, like she wrote down that Cassandra was autistic too. And it was like such a strange reveal, because halfway or like most of the way through this book you kind of get the sense that like this lady's on the spectrum somewhere. They mention several times where like one of in the office subplot, one of her clients, she works in PR, one of the clients was like, oh, I wish you'd warned us that, you know, she was on the spectrum. And when you're here, Cassandra talking about like being outdoors and lots of things, she'd be like, this is like, she'd be like very focused, very frank, answer things very directly. Like, it gave all of the area without having to say it, like all the things that would make sense for that to be true, especially if you know kind of the context of the author. So it was like very interesting that they did like this. Her sister had this big reveal, but then like Cassandra's just like 2 seconds, no, I can't be autistic, and then also her being like, yeah, actually that makes sense, that's what people have been saying the whole time, I guess I should have known. But I also feel like that might be kind of real for some people, where it's just like, hey, a thing that you thought was like you being one way actually has a name, rather than like you just being difficult. But also, it doesn't really change how you live your life now that you have a name to it, per se. Just made me think of when I got like diagnosed with like asthma as an adult. I'm like, oh, well, that explains why you hate running so much, but it doesn't like change your life and all your perspective on it. You're like, you're still living your life day to day. So I kind of liked how they dealt with that, and how she explains it in her mind, because like she just accepts it pretty easy, but also like it takes a little bit of thinking to be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense for who I am, but also that doesn't change anything about who I am as a person. That's fine, doesn't really change my family. I mean, her sister isn't like, oh, like she knew what she'd said it was messed up the whole time, like it doesn't make it better or worse, kind of thing. It is what it is. So that was like an interesting way they dealt with it. The next one I also thought was like so weird was part of this subplot of like the romance is that Artemis, her sister, like meets her boyfriend separate from her, and in one timeline you like, we can't comprehend why like this guy breaks up with her because they've been having a good time. And then in like one of the other timelines where she's been trying to fix little things, her sister meets her boyfriend separate from her because she ended up like not stopping it earlier. And the guy decides to be he's like a nature photographer, and this guy, he goes, yeah, I gotta go on a, I got like the ability to go on a trip to Mexico to shoot some aquatic life. I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks, bye. And like that's his excuse to like break up with her. And later she ends up being like, there's somebody else, isn't there? And he's like, yeah, there's somebody else. And I'm just like, the somebody else ends up being her sister, which is like crazy town as far as like what, like this guy is so weak. I don't get why they're both obsessed with him. He can't even tell her like, let's break up for like the legitimate reason. He always like in all the like the 2 timelines or several timelines, the way he breaks up with her is by making an excuse that he has to go travel, so that's why they gotta break up, rather than being like honest about his feelings with her. And I'm just like, what is this guy like? Why are these women obsessed with him? He's weak. Like, and not like the idea of breaking up because you didn't feel like you're falling in love with somebody, but like the excuses he gives is like crazy to me. Like, why would you want to bend all of time and space to be with this guy who just like wants to drop you when he's like, oh, there's another girl that I've just met, literally in one of them, like just met to go like on one date with. So strange. But yeah, so Artemis doesn't know for a while, once we finally get introduced to her, that her like new guy, it's not even a boyfriend, like a guy she's seen like once, had like one date with, and then is going to Mexico to shoot some like photography stuff. He is going to be I think about like the one time, and then she lies to him. She tells him her name's Diana, and I'm just like, this guy. Okay, anyway, before we like encapsulate him, because it's so crazy, I'm gonna talk a little bit like then there's this like fun subplot of like work where the first time she's on this like skincare line for men called Shark Skin, and she like totally botches the PR, and it does and the campaign goes horribly, so that's why she ends up getting fired. And then there's like lots of images where they talk about like she really hates talking on the phone with people and doesn't want to do that, and she's like having panic attacks and sitting in the bathroom. Once again, like there's plenty of things that indicated like, you know, a different perspective, like not being neurotypical throughout this entire book, so the reveal doesn't feel like that big of a reveal. But anyway, so she ends up thinking that this one girl like doesn't like her and is kind of annoying, but actually she's just like really supportive and this cool like nice lady, Sophie. That's awesome. So in that subplot, she starts to realize that this person actually wants to help her out and is actually like wants to be on the Shark Skin campaign. So she like gains a friend there by like paying attention to other people and trying to make some connections at the office, which is cute. And so she ends up like fixing that total campaign and like going from like, oh my god, it gets fired, to getting invited to this like ball gala at the end. And that's where she encounters what we are going to be indicated is the right love interest for her, which is this guy that she had called Ronald, which is not his name. It's like Cameron, and so like then they call him Ron, which is like kind of hilarious about getting somebody's name wrong. But we get implied that like this is actually the guy, like the guy that she was trying to be with, that she was spinning back time to try and make the perfect romance with, to not get broken up with. Like, he loves dogs, she doesn't love dogs, he's like very chill vibes, and she's, you know, very like rigid, likes things on a plan and scale. Like, it's fine, they're very different people. So we get this idea like maybe she's romanticized him too much, which I think is true. And like this Cameron doesn't like loud noises and really love crowds. Apparently he's hustle hot, which is great for her. He likes to wear the same jumper every day. It's like blue cashmere or something like that. So you're like, okay, this is the guy. This is the guy she's supposed to know more about. But we get like so little of him in this entire book. Like at the very end, we get this little snippet of being like, oh, the guy. Now that she's not so focused on Cameron, I'm sorry, not that she's not so focused on her like original boyfriend, she can see him, which is like cool, but also like we don't get a ton. We just know this guy has a plant at the office and wears the same clothes a lot. So anyway, we got the vibe that this is the guy. Fun thing, she does quit her job at this gala and be like, you know what, PR isn't for me. I don't love talking to people. Why am I doing this? which good for her. So that's kind of that subplot. Does really well in work, that's great. Gains a new friend, maybe has a little romance going. And then the other subplot is she lives in this house with, she's like subletting a room, and there's this really creepy Derek guy. Apparently he's super hot, but is always hitting on her. And in the original timeline, she's like, this guy keeps hitting on me. And the long-term girlfriend, because they've been together for a while, is doesn't really like believe her. Believes Derek, who's like, no, I'm just trying to make her comfortable. This is a weirdo lady anyway. He ends up, like in the first timeline, Sal, that's the girl, they end up not being close, so Derek ends up like manipulating the situation. But then after a while, Cass actually spends some time like thinking and talking to Sal and like being more like supportive and trying to refix little things with their relationship and trying to be supportive, which kind of culminates in this thing where Sal had actually been crying, and Cassandra like goes and like comforts her a little bit, and she's like, am I crazy? Is Derek really like cheating, or am I just insecure? And they're like, girl, trust your gut feeling. Like wherever you get that feeling, if it's in your gut, or in the book they're like in your throat, which is cute, or between your shoulder blades, it can be anywhere. It's like trust yourself. So anyway, they end up that like in the set, in the correct version, whatever the set, Sal and her become friends, which is yay. Derek gets thrown out because she's like, this cheating mofo, like get him the fuck out of my house. Because Sal just feels very like lost in the world. So that was a cute little subplot there. So anyway, now we're gonna go back to like, now that we've got those subplots going, we're gonna go back to Artemis and Cassandra. So Cassandra realizes that Artemis like met her ex-boyfriend completely separate from her and is like falling in love with him, and she knows this, but they don't know it. Like, ex-boyfriend dude doesn't know that Artemis is her sister. Artemis doesn't know that's the ex that Cassandra's been literally trying to like turn back time for. Artemis ends up being the singular person who believes Cassandra, but literally nobody else has powers. She can't like go back. Cassandra's kind of very like polar opposite of Cassandra. She's very free-spirited, goes with the flow, does weird stuff, moves countries, did an ayahuasca ceremony, did some cleanses, all that kind of thing. Like lived a lot of life, gone a lot of places, loves dogs, that kind of thing. So in this subplot, they meet, the ex and Artemis meet, don't know. Cassandra realizes that Artemis is like the other woman, but also realizes she doesn't really care as she watches her sister like kind of fall in love. It's like weird because it's so fast and early. Like they've only been on like one date and then like chatted on the phone and texting, whatever. So like falling for this guy. And one time Artemis is on the phone and being like, yeah, Cassandra, blah, 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 got this vegetarian meal. It's known that she's a vegetarian, for dinner. And then he's like, oh my God, what's your name? He's like, Dankworth. And you're like, oh my God, I'm dating the sister. Like this guy has a meltdown on the phone, Cassandra and her sister. So they go, so Cassandra fixes it and goes backwards in time, so not to like have that reveal happen again to him, because it kind of blows up that relationship. The other thing that's kind of interesting is that Cassandra realizes that going back in time and redoing stuff isn't that helpful and not really a thing that she wants to do. Is like exhausting. So she actually swears off resetting time after she realized that like a lot of stuff just accelerated the timeline. Like instead of going out with this guy for 4 months, she got broken up within like 2 weeks and 4 dates, and she's just like, you know what, I'm just gonna live time at a normal pace. I'm like, that's fine. So by the time Artemis is in there, she's technically said she doesn't turn back time anymore, but she does at that time. And then this is the crazy part of like how this story ends, that I'm like, the ending is so weird. It's so weird. So Cassandra basically kind of forgets to tell her sister that the ex is like the guy she's with, her ex. She's chill with it. She's like, I don't love him, whatever. I'm not mad that my sister is gonna be dating him, and they seem a much better match. So she's like over it at that point. But then the like last chapter is like a little going away party because Cassandra quit her job at that gala, and so like her boss is there, the hot like Ron guy is there, her friend Sal, who was like the lady who lived at the house, and Sophie, the girl she started being friends with at work, who helped her through the shark skin campaign and actually turned into a success. Like you see the little community of like women and like other people that she got close to appear in this like last scene where she's like with her sister, who she is repairing the relationship with her because she didn't talk to her for 10 years. You know, she's gonna go study classics with her mom, like her mom did. So yeah, we get this like kind of like at peace moment, and she's like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell Artemis about my ex being her new like love interest. So he like shows up early or whatever to surprise not Cassandra but Artemis at this like little going away celebration for her, and he nopes right on out of there. They're like, wait, Cassandra's your sister, Artemis is, oh my god, his brain melts. And like this is the whole thing where I'm like, I don't comprehend why these two girls are so obsessed with this guy. Like he just like, you know, one thing's a little weird, he's like, I gotta go, Houdini's himself out of here. Like you don't even want to talk, you don't want to figure it out. Like Artemis in that moment is also like, oh, by the way, my name's not Diana, it's Artemis, haha. Like, I mean, bad timing, but it's also like this guy just like nopes right on out of there. But at that point, like Cassandra and him hadn't actually even had a relationship like they'd had in the first plot line for like months. They'd only gone out like 3-4 times or something like that. So it was so like strange. And so this is how it ends, is that I love this. It's like so upsetting for an ending of a book because you're like, cool, she's got peace, she figured it out, like whatever. So she decides like, oh my god, Artemis, like this is your guy and I've messed it up. Obviously this guy noped right on out of there. So she's like, I'm gonna turn back time. And Artemis is like, what? You can't do that. Look at all this stuff. And she's like, and Artemis like, no. Like you hear Cassandra thinking in her head about how she's going to like redo everything so that way she and the ex like actually like just erase all of their relationship. Like the relationship she had with him was the mistake part. So she like goes through that fake timeline a little bit in her head about like she's gonna get her sister and this guy together and she's gonna like erase the meeting of them. And I'm like, okay, so basically the entire book at that point is pointless. Like none of the book happens. It's like you wake up and it's a dream ending. Like, because we don't get anything after that. She's just like, I'm gonna go back and fix it. And her sister's like, no, don't. But then, like, quickly accepts that she's gonna do it. She's like, well, we missed this relationship. But no, like, it was so disappointing as an ending, because basically the ending was the entire book doesn't actually exist. It's like her recording the midpoint of what happened there. And actually, so we don't know if it goes down the same way, because we've already learned several times that little things change. So we don't know if it actually works out with Sal. We don't know if she like hangs out with Sophie still. We don't know if she like repairs the relationship with her boss. Like, and we presume she does give us the sense that she is going to talk to her sister and doesn't want to care about that again. But it's just so strange that like the guy she was going back in time for, now she's like, actually we're gonna erase the whole thing. And then I don't know if this is really a plot hole, but it's like kind of fascinating, the idea of being like she can only go back to that moment. So is she supposed to erase that part, or does she just always have this power? Because she's the only one with this kind of like magical ability in the book. So yeah, like I said, it was an interesting uniqueness. The plot was kind of fun. The different subplots weren't that bad. Obviously, several times you get the notion that a lot of times when you repeat things and story areas, that like the point is to actually learn something about the people you're ignoring. So like that had some satisfying endings. I really enjoyed the way they talk about like emotions for her, where she's like, it's yellow and pink, but I'm not trying to figure out, like, yellow for you might be different than yellow for him, and what that means. And like I think it does a good job of like giving somebody who might not experience the world through like that neurodivergent lens kind of a comprehension of like, why is she freaking out? Because on the outside you might, why is it freaking out? But to her, you're hearing this narration of being like, oh my god, these sheets are so scratchy and the lighting's not right and I can't sleep because all I can hear is the ticking down the, like, so you get this sense of like understanding the experience a little bit easier, understanding like why somebody might be freaking out when somebody else is like acting like it's not that big of a problem at different levels. So there's a lot of things that are desirable in this book. There's lots of things that I'm like, I don't like how this went down. So I leave it up to you. Like I said, it's not a recommendation. This is more of like a summary talking about it kind of book. I found some of the ways they did, like I said, very upsetting. The way they handled it, and also why people were like, I never got the sense of like why we're obsessed with this guy. He didn't even seem that like, Will, I think his name, is like great or interesting. He just like was an object to be focused on rather than understanding like why he's so great, which might have been also on purpose in some ways. But I don't get why you're gonna like redo all of your life for this dusty ass man. Like, ridiculous. It was part of Reese's book club, so maybe other people found it more enjoyable or something. I just thought it was very strange. So I will leave it up to you to see if you also feel the same way. Let me know in the comments.